Welcome to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. And today I'm in a very good mood because I'm talking about Lou Reed's Transformer. This is an album I've been meaning to listen to for a long time. And, lots of the time I make these reviews just to cap off the experience of listening to an album a couple times to sort of give myself closure, to give my thoughts some permanence. But in this case, it was just a thoroughly enjoyable listen, a 10 out of 10 album for me. And I think obviously a big reason for that is it's a genuinely great album. So many albums, maybe they have iconic cover art, maybe they have a very famous song on them, but it feels like the album is just a vehicle to promote a single. Whereas in this case, every song on the album is performed with energy. Every song on the album has love and individual personality behind it. That's what it takes to make a 10 out of 10 album, when you care about the less famous songs on your album just as much as the ones you intend to be singles. I think the other reason I enjoyed this one so much is actually because I had unfairly low standards. I was used to a fairly bare bones version of Lou Reed's sound where he talks more than sings and just sort of plays some lethargic guitar in the background. And while that is a sort of rough caricature of how his sound comes across, the fact that in practice, and certainly on this record, it's not that extreme. There was enough instrumentation to give it a rich sound, and Lou Reed did his best to sing and not just talk sing. It made it not only a good album in its own merits, but also a real pleasant surprise to listen to. The first track is called Vicious. This is a provocative title, but it's performed with a lighthearted voice. And the little bit of backstory I saw about it was, I think Andy Warhol told Lou Reed, you should write a song called Vicious. And Lou Reed said to him, what should be about? And Andy Warhol said, vicious, like someone who hits you with flowers. So that's the kind of vibe I got of it. It's a song playing with the word vicious, but in the most lighthearted way, kind of like Tom Petty's You're So Bad. Maybe Lou Reed is talking about the gritty underbelly, but he's doing so with love. Track number 2 is called Andy's Chest, and sonically this continues in a similar playful note. One thing I noted with Lou Reed's songs, and this one in particular, is that they're filled with metaphors. But, unlike the pretentious, mysterious metaphors of Bob Dylan, most of Lou Reed's metaphors taken in isolation are fairly simple, but he sort of builds them up until you have this very colorful, whimsical world. So this world has a bat in it, a rattlesnake, a metaphorical ocelot. So it's just a lot of fun to listen to these songs, and you understand individually what each of these metaphors mean, but they add up to create something quite impressive. And musically too, this one sort of starts out in that Lou Reed simplistic way, but the sound builds and gets bigger. Now, the actual meaning of the song is a bit mysterious. The title refers to Andy Warhol and the fact that he was shot, though he did survive that assassination attempt. And without looking up the history, you wouldn't know that. But I guess loosely, the song is about someone who is admired by many people, including Lou Reed, but as a result of that admiration is also going to be the target of some people's ire. Track number 3 is a big famous one, and one of the two that I knew before listening to this record, Perfect Day. And well, it's a showstopper, a song trying to capture happiness in an ordinary day. The production stands out, and it is pretty darn perfect. It's an enticing full sound with strings and piano. But when I say the production is perfect, I don't just mean it has those rich instruments, because sometimes rich instruments can drown out a singer, or they're sort of a distraction that has nothing to do with the music. Whereas here, those instruments flow along with the music perfectly, and Lou Reed's voice comes out loud and clear. Now, while the song Perfect Day has perfect production, I don't think it's quite a perfect composition. The lyrics are quite simple, and at one point Lou Reed rhymes home with home, generally trying and find another way of saying a thing so you don't repeat your words. And the bridge here is unsettlingly minimal, even as it raises interesting questions with its line of, you're going to reap just what you sow. But I feel like the imperfection of the Lou Reed part of this song kind of adds to its magic. My understanding of the context here is, Lou Reed is someone fighting substance abuse. And, this is about someone trying to have a normal day without, going out on the party scene and getting high. So it's okay that it's imperfect, because it's not a song about being perfect. It's a song about trying. It's a song about trying to find happiness and celebrate that happiness, even if it's not all the way there. Track number 4 is a fun one. It's called Hanging Round. This is reminiscent of David Bowie songs like Suffragette City and Jean Genie and Watch That Man. And I realized I haven't mentioned it at this point, but this album comes out right after Ziggy Stardust, and it's produced by David Bowie and Mick Ronson. So they're certainly contributing to the magic. Again, we get a very lighthearted vocal delivery and some quite surreal images, ranging with someone having sex in hallways, a relatively public space, to someone having dentures on their nose. With this song, there's definitely some hidden darkness, and particularly in the placement on the record and in that title. Lou Reed desperately and lovingly says, "Oh, you keep me hanging on," and Perfect Day. And it's as if this song is sung from the other perspective. We were made to feel grateful for the person who lets the other person hang on, but maybe this is that other person singing and saying, "No, you're a bad influence. Get out of my life. I don't need you hanging around me." Track number 5 is the other famous one, the other one I knew beforehand. It's called Walk on the Wild Side. And I would describe it as kind of like a pop song, but chopped up into pop music's composite pieces. So we have all the standard instruments, yet the thing that's most unusual about this one is the bass is much louder than the guitar. At one open mic I used to go to in Montreal, I briefly saw this person who she didn't bring her guitar, she brought her bass. And I mean, that's cool. We need bass players in the world, but it's obviously a bit awkward because we're used to, as a society, listening to just guitar and singing or just piano and singing, but just bass and singing doesn't quite work. But the one song she was able to get to be really good was her version of Walk on the Wild Side. And she even asked some of us to come up from the audience and be the backup singers. But yeah, story time over. This song is essentially a mostly normal song, but the pieces are sort of cut and pasted. So again, the bass is louder than the guitar, and sometimes other instruments join in, like violin or saxophone. But with the violin in particular, it's produced in such a way that we hear it as an individual instrument. It's not creating that rich backup sound. It's a sort of awkward, simple solo layered on top of the other instruments. Another way in which this one kind of takes apart the standard pop song is in the famous line where Lou Reed says, "And the colored girls go do, to do, to do, to do," before we actually get the backup singers coming in and going do, to do, to do. So obviously this is a low-key commentary on racial and gender segregation in the music industry. Black women tend to be backup singers for whatever reason. But on a less serious note, it also creates the image that Lou Reed is not an accomplished musician working in a studio with access to all the musicians he wants, but rather he's like pretending he's just an amateur songwriter in his bedroom, imagining all the parts he would throw into his song. This creates some relatability to many of his fans who would not be famous musicians. And it also just creates a persona behind which he can write his songs. Lou Reed talks about these various dark subjects, but if he's saying, "No, I'm not in the darkness, I'm not a character in the serious story, I'm just an artist painting a picture for you," it gives a reason for him to sing with lightness, even as he's mentioning some darker images. Track number 6 is called Makeup. Walk on the Wild Side was in part about drag queens or trans women. I'm not exactly sure what was going on. And that image is continued quite explicitly in Makeup. The chorus goes, "We're coming out of our closets." And you're like, oh, it's not about cis women. One of the defining features of this song is that it has this unusual thumping tuba sound on it, which almost gives it a circus feel. So it's sort of leaning into the otherness of the characters. It's saying, society see us as clowns, but we don't care. We're going to come out into the world, and if you're going to see us as clowns, so be it, but we're still going to enjoy ourselves. Track 7 must have been another big hit, but it's one I have somehow never heard before. It's called Satellite of Love. And when I first heard it, my reaction was to say, this is a beautiful song, but it's not about much of anything. It's sort of just like about watching a space launch on TV. It's this song saying people can be othered from society, people can be vicious, people can be all these things this album is about, but we occasionally have these beautiful uniting moments where we're all just innocent and appreciate the same beautiful images. Now, that said, the bridge of the song is a little different from the rest of it. It seems to be about jealousy and love triangles, and I guess using the image of satellite to say, people floating in and out of each other's orbits. But for the most part, it's just a song of cosmic beauty, and it has this haunting kind of Christmassy back vocal, I think, coming from David Bowie. It's a magical song if you haven't listened to it. Track number 8, Wagon Wheel. It's not the Darius Rucker Old Crow Medicine Show song, but it's something interesting. It's at once simple and ambitious, catchy and chaotic, lighthearted and panicked. seems to be both accepting that relationships and will also trying to provide a warning that it's a bad world out there. It's basically the gritty New York version of Cat Stevens' Wild World. Track number 9 is called New York Telephone Conversation, and this one is just an attempt to make a melody out of mundane New York day-to-day life. It doesn't quite sound like speech, but Lou Reed is trying to broadly capture a culture where people are rude and busy, but, occasionally recognize they're nonetheless lonely and need to talk to each other and see each other. Track number 10 is called I'm So Free. It opens with the line, I'm Mother Nature's son. Hard not to think that's not referring to the Paul McCartney Beatles White Album song, which is a very bucolic, country folkish sounding tune. And this is a song played on electric guitar with intense backup vocals, clearly reflecting, again, New York City vibrancy. It's sort of saying maybe we don't have to have this connection to nature. Maybe there's this other fundamentally free state, this way we can connect with our roots without just going to this simple country pastoral sound. And finally, we get Good Night Ladies, possibly a reference to the Barbershop Quartet song from The Music Man. And again, it seems to be Lou Reed putting a vulgar New York kind of spin on a more folksy, less big city kind of message. I should also mention the CD comes with 2 bonus tracks, an acoustic version of Hangin' Round, which is also pretty catchy, and an acoustic version of Perfect Day, which is a bit rougher. And it's actually interesting because in this original version of the chorus, he goes back and forth between singing just a summer's day and just a perfect day. And it's interesting because I feel like Summer's Day actually flows off the tongue. It's more melodic than Perfect Day, but maybe he decided that calling it Perfect Day made the song more unique, made it a better sell. And then hidden at the end of the Perfect Day bonus track is someone sounding like they're doing a movie ad, except it's for the new Lou Reed album. Not something I've heard, but it's very cool. So this is a classic album for a reason. So let me know your thoughts. I'm obviously not the person who knows the most about Lou Reed in the world. So if you are a Lou Reed fan, you want to share your thoughts about this album or other Lou Reed records or Velvet Underground records, please do in the comments below. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.